Join us as we meet the 2012 DoDEA Teacher of the Year, Angela Wilson, and celebrate the many contributions of DoDEA teachers. Coming up next in the chat room. Welcome to the chat room. I'm Frank O'Gara, your host today. The National Teacher of the Year program recognizes teachers for their dedication and contributions to the lives of American students. With me in the studio is the 2012 DoDEA Teacher of the Year, Angela Wilson, from the Mediterranean District. Ms. Wilson is an English language arts and forensics teacher at Vicenza Middle School. She has 11 years of teaching experience and has taught in public schools in Utah and Illinois and in DoDEA schools in Korea, Turkey, and Italy. Ms. Wilson graduated as the Department Scholar in Education from Western Illinois University in 1997, where she earned her Bachelor of Science degree in Education. She received a Master of Education degree from Southern Utah University. Angela Wilson recently represented DoDEA at the National Teacher of the Year celebration in Washington, D.C., and was one of 4 finalists for the national title of Teacher of the Year. Welcome, Angela.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Oh, it's absolutely our pleasure to have you on as a guest today on the show. I know that you had a great week in Washington recently, okay, and have had really a great ride since being named. What does this honor mean to you?
I don't know if there's words to really describe what this means, but I am extremely grateful to my community, to the parents, most importantly the students, because this honor is a representation of all of us. And if somebody would have told me a year ago that this would be my year in education, I would have never believed him. So it means a great deal. Well,
we're absolutely thrilled for you. And when you were in Washington, I know that you got to meet a lot of national leaders.
Pretty incredible.
How did that go?
Well, yeah, once again, if somebody would have told me a year ago that I would be at one moment visiting with Arne Duncan, the Secretary of Education, that's quite a treat for a teacher, and then that evening being in the Vice President's residence, eating and mingling with other amazing state teachers of the year, and then actually getting to meet Dr. Biden herself, and I want to say her commitment to military children is just immense.
Oh, and I bet you made a great connection because she's a teacher
I
as
did.
well,
I actually
right?
invited her to come to Italy and visit our schools,
wow,
and hopefully
well,
that might be a reality.
Let's hope that works out. That's
right.
super. Now, you met the president as well.
And then the next day, I met the president, and once again, just so down to earth, and conveyed his love of military children. And I thanked him so much for his commitment, because as a presidency, they really do support military families.
And I heard that you got a coin.
I did. I was the only state teacher of the year to get the commander's coin, which is really an honor.
That's wonderful. That's great. I want to ask you some questions today about, about your role as the teacher of the year, and also about teaching in general. And I want to start with something that I've heard you talk about in some of the presentations that you've made. You've said, okay, that the role in the classroom is one that meets students at their levels, that discovers their interests, and ignites their passion for learning through dynamic, creative, and daily lessons. Why is this important? What does this mean?
I think it's crucial and even more important in today's age. I mean, the type of learners we have coming into our classrooms are different than the learners we had 10 years ago, let alone a year ago. And so as teachers, if we don't customize our learning around their interests and their needs, we can't reach these 21st century learners. So I like to use the phrase that we've heard before, bring learning alive. I think any lesson can be brought alive through connecting to students' senses, to their emotions, to using what they really can relate to. And we can do that in a number of ways.
You want to talk about some of those ways?
Some of the things that I do in my classroom, but many teachers do all around the nation. There's so many great ideas out there, but something we recently did, there was a Costa Cruise Line crash in Italy, yes. And that was relevant to a lot of the students because many of them had been, including myself, on a cruise just before that. And so we brought up the Titanic, and we brought learning alive by having students dress up in costumes, but they became real passengers on the Titanic, using real names, dressing in costumes, or in period clothing, walking the length of the Titanic. We do something called Grammar Idol, and this was actually designed by the students themselves. American Idol's popular, so once again, we connect to their interests. So instead of giving them a worksheet on the 8 parts of speech, we had them write. They joined bands or cooperative groups. We made band posters that flanked the hallways. They wrote their own lyrics to a part of speech. They then performed them on the stage, where they received votes by audience members, which was the middle school community. We brought judges in, we had trophies, and then we went on tour performing to the elementary classrooms as they sang their songs, and they were signing autographs. They were thrilled about this. And then finally we made Grammar Idol CDs that actually, with Grammar Idol Greatest Hits, that the students were putting on their iPods and playing at the youth centers. And that's part of bringing learning alive, making it meaningful to them so that at the end of the day, they don't just forget what they've learned. They continue the learning process on their own. And for all teachers, that's our ultimate goal, to create those lifelong learners.
And I think it has to be a motivator for kids as well.
I hope so, and I think it is. If you usually ask students what do they remember most, it's those what I call, actually another teacher gave me this name, it's called memorable moments. And those are the moments you remember. And I think back to my own education, middle school, which I teach right now. I remember one thing that I learned in terms of education, and that was dressing up as one of the phases of the Vietnam War. I dressed up in fatigues, and I was writing a letter to family members about what it was like to be in the Vietnam War, and we had music in the background, and we competed in this history contest, but I don't remember anything else.
Wow.
And one time I asked my class, I said, well, tell me the last phenomenal worksheet that changed your life. And everybody laughed because worksheets can't change lives. So that dynamic, bringing learning alive is so crucial if we really want to create those memorable moments and those lifelong learners.
Well, and it connects them to the learning, and it's relevant for them.
Absolutely.
I want to talk a little bit about connections, because you, in your Teacher of the Year message, which we'll remind our viewers is on our website as well to see, talk very eloquently about connections that you make as a teacher. Let's talk about that.
Okay, I really think connections are the key. And for everyone, but especially in education, and especially with our military students, where that school is really that home away from home, that stable, consistent place in their life. So it's imperative that we build connections. But I see connections in three ways. First, connecting to the student, then connecting to the content, and then connecting to the community. So as a teacher, we need to form personal connections with each and every one of our students, no matter how long they're in our presence. We need to not only know their academic levels, that's a big push in education, and it's absolutely important, but we also need to know their interests, their goals, their fears. One of the first things I have my students do, it's actually their first homework assignment, but it's not for students, it's for the parents. And the parents have to write me a letter in 1,000,000 words or less about their child. Wow. And it's so amazing to hear parents just grateful for this opportunity and then just pouring their hearts out about what they want for their kids, because they want that connection.
And you get a lot of parents who participate in that.
It's a homework assignment, so I keep these all year. Yeah, right. And I keep these all year, and I refer back to them. But that's just one way of getting to know the students. Welcome them at the door. Know their interests, their goals. Hey, talk about how was that swimming meet yesterday? How did that soccer game go? Go to the soccer game. They feel that value and that voice, and then students will go to that next level. Then the second connection is then connecting content to them, and that kind of goes back to what we were talking about with relevant information, making it relevant to them, meaningful to them. That's challenging in middle school especially, but it's challenging in all grade levels. So lots of times the only thing students currently connect to is maybe their iPod, but we have to find a way to make it more meaningful, bring that learning alive, form those memorable moments. And then finally, we need to connect to the community. We know as teachers, and I learned this really early on, I can't do it by myself. It involves us all. We are all an integral part of the learning process. So parents, come into the classrooms, please. Community members, we can learn so much from them. And as teachers, we also not only need to pull community in, but we also need to be out in the community.
Now, in our military communities, how important is it for teachers to understand the military culture, to understand what the moms and dads and sponsors of our students do?
All right, I think it's crucial. We have to understand and remember that this is what the kids have in their forefront of their minds each and every day. And if we don't once again build those connections and understand the mission and what they are dealing with on a daily basis, we can't truly reach them. Sometimes, I really mean this, and I'm sure I can speak for all the teachers out there, I step back and I just look at these kids that I am privileged to teach each day. And it makes me teary-eyed because I don't think they even know how amazing they are. How they already have the skills to be successful in the 21st century. They're adaptable, they're flexible, they can change, they're courageous, they can persevere. And I think as teachers we always need to remember this mission, and that these kids are dealing with a lot, and lots going through their mind, and it's our honor honor really to teach the children of America's heroes each and every day.
And the community that you're currently in, Vicenza, has one that's been affected greatly by deployments over the last few years.
Very high deployment, and starting again in June. Many of my students, if not most, are going through multiple deployments, some of them 5th or 6th deployments this summer.
I watched some of the media coverage from the national, the Washington Week and the banquet that you had with the Secretary of Education, who you mentioned earlier. And a lot of the messages that I heard from people there were about respect for the teaching profession. Okay, what are your views on this?
I think it's wonderful, and I think it's really the foundation of what we need to change in education in terms if we want to get any further in any other initiatives. We know as teachers ourselves, sometimes we don't even respect ourselves, and I don't know where that comes from. I think a lot of it might be from society. We've often heard the phrase, if you can, you do, and if you can't, you teach. So as educators, we need to respect ourselves to know enough to know that we are doing something amazing. And research tells us, and the public needs to know this as well, that the most influential factor in a child's education, besides parents, is the teacher. And so I think we need to start building a culture of respect for education, and that's going to come from first teachers respecting themselves, but then more importantly from community members, not just education members, but from businesses, from of course parents, from organizations, building up education, valuing the teachers in the classroom through media promotions. And we need to be cheerleaders, advocates for education. If we can build that culture of respect, then we can start making some other needed changes in education.
Yeah, really critical, important.
I agree.
Now, what about, I mean, all of us, I think, when we reflect back on our time in school, most of us at least can name a teacher that really made an impact, made a difference. And maybe it was just a small thing, some kind of recognition or whatever, but was there a teacher who made an impact on in your life?
Right, absolutely. I'm really a teacher today because of a teacher. There's two that come to my mind. First is my first grade teacher. Her name is Mrs. Yor, and I can tell you that through this process I have been able to reconnect with her 30 years later. And I'll have to share that with you. It's pretty incredible. But I was 6 years old going into first grade and recently had come from living in the South Pacific Islands of Tonga. My dad was a teacher, the Tongan Islands, and an educator throughout his whole career. Still is an educator. But we had been living in a foreign country, moved to America. I started kindergarten very nervous, scared, shy, but yet excited at the same time. And I remember that year just being a terrible experience. I don't remember learning anything, but I remember how I felt. And I felt isolated and alone. My teacher never took the time to get to know me. Actually, 2 months into the school year, she asked my mom if I was deaf because I never talked. And my mom was shocked by that. You don't even know my child. So once again, that forms the importance of building those connections. But I entered first grade with these same inhibitions. I hated school. They had to force me to go. I cried all the time. And my first grade teacher didn't ignore that. I remember the first time I met her, she got down on her knees. She looked me in the eyes. She knew my name. She found out what I was good at, and she used that to kind of drive and motivate me. She would let me sometimes sit on the side and draw pictures. I remember drawing a picture about my most favorite things, and rainbows and flowers and balloons, and I actually won first place in the art contest. Wow. And I still have that ribbon and that picture. But more importantly, I don't remember what I learned, but I remember how I felt. And I knew my teacher loved me. And I decided when I was 6 years old that I was going to not just be a teacher, but I was going to be a teacher like her.
Wow, that relationship and that connection is so important.
Right.
Okay. Well, was your mom a teacher as well?
My mom is an educator as well.
Wow.
2 of my sisters, my brother and sister-in-law, so we come from a family of educators.
Incredible. Well, to your whole family, and especially your mom and dad and those teachers in your life who made a difference that we are now benefiting from in our system, we're absolutely grateful. Angela, what advice would you give to your colleagues around the world as they go to our DoDEA classrooms every day?
I think my biggest advice would be to remember your story. We often hear that students have a story that they're coming into the classroom with, and they're writing their own story. It's the same for teachers. Nobody goes into teaching for the money, for the fame. We go into teaching because there's a story, there's a reason, we have a goal, we know we can make a difference. And sometimes, especially right now in society with so many things piling on top of teachers and so much negativity against teachers, we need to keep that story in our focus because that story is really what drives our passion. And that passion is what's contagious.
Well, your story is contagious for sure, and we have a wonderful story as a school system of great teachers over many, many decades who have built a system that our kids, our military-connected kids, certainly deserve. And so we appreciate your contributions in that. It's been great to talk to you today.
And my pleasure.
We wish you well. We know we're going to hear a lot from you, you know, over in the near future, in the far future as well. And we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for what you do for our military kids every day.
Well, thank you.
It's our
really
pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Our pleasure. You can find more about the Teacher of the Year program at the URL shown on the screen. Thank you for joining us in this edition of the Chat Room.